Hey there, amazing fans! Before we dive into today's drama, don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means the world to us. Now, welcome to another relaxing moment with Sugar Stories. Grab a seat, sit back, relax, and let's journey into the story together. The walls of the Arclight Fertility Institute gleamed with sterile perfection, a place where hope and science met under the hum of fluorescent lighting and whispered dreams. It smelled of antiseptic, eucalyptus hand soap, and something less tangible, desperation, perhaps. Or secrecy. Dr. Adrian Wells sat in the private intake room, eyes on his phone, thumb rhythmically scrolling. Not that he was reading anything. It was just a distraction, a wall between him and the room, between him and the choice he was making. He was dressed plainly, not in his usual tailored hospital attire, but jeans, a black turtleneck, and a baseball cap pulled low. A small act of anonymity. One of many. "Mr. Alexander West?" a gentle voice called. He looked up, meeting the eyes of the nurse standing at the door. She was young, early 30s, maybe, but something in her gaze held more weight than her years should suggest. Her badge read, Elena Thorn. Yes, Adrian said, folding his phone into his coat pocket and standing up. Elena stepped aside to let him pass. Her voice was warm but measured. "Right this way, Mr. West. You'll be in room 3. He followed her down a quiet hallway lined with motivational posters. "Future families start here. Every life begins with a choice." Adrian found them ironic. He wasn't starting a family. He was commissioning biology. Room 3 was a small, dimly lit chamber with a leather couch, a plasma screen, and a small white tray with sterile containers. A beige envelope sat beside them. "You've been here before?" Elena asked, pausing at the door. "No," Adrian said. "But I know the process." "Good." She smiled politely. "Everything you need is in the folder. When you're done, press the button near the door. I'll retrieve the sample for processing." He nodded, not meeting her eyes. She watched him for a moment longer than necessary, then quietly closed the door behind her. Elena didn't return to the nurse's station immediately. She stood by the viewing window, her eyes narrowed. She could see the hallway camera feed flickering in real time on the monitor beside the desk. Room 3 showed a steady red dot, occupied. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a small flash drive. It was encrypted, untraceable. She slotted it into the lab's internal terminal. A sequence of keystrokes. A hidden program launched. Elena had spent months preparing for this. Learning the system. Understanding the vulnerabilities. Becoming invisible to the clinic's digital eyes. Every shift, every late night, had built up to this moment. Inside room 3, Adrian sat in silence. The folder remained untouched. His gaze was on the floor. He hadn't told anyone about this. Not his friends. Not his team at Memorial West Hospital. Not even the woman he was casually seeing, if you could call it that. Emotional connection wasn't something he pursued. He dealt in facts, biology, control. Love was chaos. He opened the envelope. The forms were basic. Consent, anonymity clauses, surrogacy options. He had already signed digital copies using his pseudonym, Alexander West. A calculated lie. The clinic hadn't questioned it. Money spoke louder than names. Finally, he reached for the small container, swabbed his hands with alcohol, and disappeared into the silence. Elena returned just in time to see the red light above room 3 flick off. He was done. She stood calmly as Adrian stepped out and handed her the sealed container. "Thank you," she said. Adrian didn't linger. He nodded once and walked out of the hallway without a word. Elena carried the sample back to the lab, heart pounding. The logbook on the terminal flashed. Sample hashtag R276/donor. West/status, awaiting processing. She hesitated for only a second. Then deleted the entry. Another tap of the keyboard. She marked it, discarded, contamination suspected. And just like that, Adrian's sample vanished from the official record. But it didn't vanish from the room. Elena removed it from the tray, placed it in a cryo vial she had brought from home, wrapped in an inconspicuous patient discharge envelope, and tucked it into the hidden compartment in her locker. By the time the night shift nurse came in, sample #R276 was already gone. That night, Elena returned to her apartment, a quiet one-bedroom at the edge of downtown, and locked the door behind her. The city pulsed outside, taxis, sirens, and lives she didn't care about. She changed into clean clothes, sanitized everything, laid out the self-insemination kit. The clock read 2:13 a.m. Her hands were steady. She looked at herself in the mirror. Not the nurse. Not the quiet professional. Just Elena. Just a woman with a past no one knew. And a future only she could now shape. She whispered to her reflection, to the man whose sample she had stolen, "You won't run from this one, Adrian." Then she did it. 2 weeks earlier, she'd visited a private doctor, off the books. She'd confirmed her ovulation cycle. No one would know. The stolen sample wouldn't be missed, except by Adrian, one day. When it was too late, she stared at the ceiling afterward, lying in the dark. Her heart beat against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "Please let it take," she whispered. "Please." Not because she wanted revenge. Not entirely. She wanted justice. She wanted to rewrite the ending that Adrian had written for her sister. Elena's sister, Mara, had been the golden one. A surgical resident under Dr. Adrian Wells at Memorial West. Bright, diligent, driven. They'd celebrated when Mara got the spot. It was her dream. Then came the disaster. A patient died in a routine operation. Mara was the assisting resident. The hospital opened an inquiry. Adrian could have told the truth that he'd missed a key sign in the pre-op. That his decision, not Mara's, had led to complications. Instead, he blamed her. The report was sanitized. The board believed him. Mara's license was suspended pending further investigation. 6 months later, she jumped from the rooftop of their childhood apartment. Elena never forgot the silence of that day. The unanswered text messages. The phone call. The sound of her mother's scream when they told her. Adrian went on to win awards. Publish papers. Grace medical journals. Mara was buried in a rented grave, the kind you pay for in installments. No one remembered her. Except Elena. And now, Adrian's legacy wouldn't go untouched. 3 weeks later, Elena stared at the pregnancy test in her bathroom. Her hands trembled. Not from fear. From 3 lines. A strong positive. But something else too. A tightness. A pressure. An instinct. She scheduled a private scan at a low-profile clinic. The technician moved the wand slowly over her belly, then froze. "There's more than one," the woman said. Elena blinked. "Twins." The woman hesitated. "No. Triplets." Elena's breath caught in her chest. Triplets. She walked home under a gray sky, every step slower than the last. Her hands curled protectively over her stomach. She was no longer just a thief. She was a vessel. A guardian. A mother. But somewhere beneath the elation, under the shock, guilt bloomed. The children would never be tools. She couldn't see them that way anymore. Not now. Not after hearing their tiny heartbeats echo through the sonogram room. 3 hearts. And all of them carried Adrian Wells' blood. At the clinic, things began to shift. An internal audit flagged a missing sample. A new lab technician, meticulous, nosy, filed a report. Elena kept her face blank. She asked innocent questions. Pretended to share in the concern. But in her chest, something clawed at her. They were close. Too close. That night, as the city slept beneath storms, she sat by her window, one hand over her belly. "You're safe," she whispered. "No one will take you from me." She didn't know the storm was just beginning. The morning light poured through the half-drawn blinds of Elena's apartment, slicing the room into bands of gold and shadow. She sat at the edge of her bed, wrapped in a faded gray robe, holding a photo in her hand. It was of Mara. Her sister's eyes sparkled with the kind of ambition only the young and brilliant dared to carry. That photo had been taken the day she was accepted into her surgical residency under Dr. Adrian Wells. The same man whose children now grew inside Elena. The same man who had destroyed Mara with a lie. Elena placed the photo gently on the dresser, then stood, pressing a hand to her belly. It was still too early to show, but she felt them, the quiet weight of 3 tiny lives growing beneath her skin. She whispered to them, "You're not just my children. You're hers too." Weeks later, at the clinic, Elena sat in the staff lounge, sipping decaf tea while the others gossiped over fresh lab rumors. "Did you hear about the sperm audit?" one nurse whispered. "Yeah, they think one went missing. Something about a donor named West." Elena didn't flinch. She calmly took another sip, letting their voices blur into the background hum of the coffee machine. "They say it might have been discarded by accident. Or maybe the system glitched." Elena stood up, stretching. "Could be both. You know how old the terminal is. Sometimes it erases logs randomly." They nodded, unconvinced but willing to believe anything easy. The truth was buried, for now. Later that evening, in her private doctor's office, Elena lay on the exam table, her fingers gripped tight over the paper-lined edge. The sonographer moved the wand across her stomach with practiced precision, watching the monitor. "There they are," the woman said gently. "Triplets. All strong heartbeats." Elena stared at the grainy image, where 3 flickering pulses beat steadily in the black and white void. "They're measuring just right. No abnormalities. Do you want to hear them?" Elena nodded. The machine hummed, then, the sound of life. 1 heartbeat, fast and fluttering. Then another. Then a third. She covered her mouth with her hands. Her eyes filled. 3 perfect heartbeats. Flashback, 2 years ago. Mara sat on the edge of her twin bed, textbooks piled around her, laughing into a phone. Her voice was brighter then. Her hope untouched. "You should see Dr. Wells in the OR, Elena," she said. "He's like poetry. Controlled chaos. Total genius." Elena smiled from the doorway. "You've got a crush." Mara blushed. "No, I admire him. It's different." But Elena remembered how her sister's voice changed when she said his name. The breathlessness. The reverence. She remembered, too, how that light dimmed after the death. After the accusation. After the silence from Dr. Wells, when Mara begged him to tell the truth. He never answered her messages. Her pregnancy began to take its toll. Morning sickness became all-day nausea. Her feet ached. Her joints protested. Her body was changing faster than she anticipated. But the hardest part wasn't physical. It was the quiet fear that she'd made a mistake. Not in stealing the sample, she didn't regret that. Not yet. But in thinking she could do it alone. In the mirror, she looked at herself. Her skin pale, her eyes hollowed by restless nights. "You're stronger than this," she told her reflection. "You have to be." Dr. Adrian Wells sat in his glass-walled office on the 15th floor, reviewing surgical charts with robotic precision. He was every bit the portrait of excellence. Immaculate suit, clipped tone, godlike confidence. But a strange message flickered across his phone that afternoon. "Anonymous, you're a father. Triplets. And she made the choice for you." He froze. The air shifted. He deleted the message. But he didn't forget it. Elena walked into the fertility clinic, her movements slower now. As she passed the lab wing, she caught sight of the new tech Marissa squinting at the computer. Elena forced a smile. "Still looking into the lost sample?" Marissa nodded. "It's weird. It was logged under a pseudonym, West. But all the other details were wiped. No backtrace." Elena feigned curiosity. Maybe it was a test record. Or a glitch. "Maybe," Marissa said, unconvinced. "But we're required to report anomalies. This one's being flagged." Elena's heart stuttered. To who? To legal. And the medical board. Just protocol. Elena's hands curled into fists by her side. The net was closing. Mara sat on their mother's couch, eyes ringed with insomnia. "He didn't defend me," she whispered. "He knew it was his error." Elena knelt beside her, holding her hands. "You can fight this," she said. "I don't want to fight anymore." 1 week later, Mara overdosed. There was no note. Just her name on a news ticker that ran for exactly 6 seconds on local news. She woke up gasping, soaked in sweat, her heart racing. Dreams of drowning. Of children sinking beneath black water. She stumbled to the bathroom, ran cold water over her face. Her phone buzzed. A private message on an encrypted account she hadn't used in months. Adrian, I need to speak to you. I know. She stared at it for several minutes. Then turned off the phone and flushed the SIM card down the toilet. The clinic's management summoned Elena to a routine meeting. Inside were two unfamiliar men in suits. One of them placed a folder on the table. Inside, screenshots, timestamps, deleted logs recovered from the internal system. You accessed donor profiles after hours, one man said calmly. You marked a sample as discarded, but the physical inventory never confirmed it. Elena's voice was steady. Is this an accusation? No, said the other man. It's a warning. If this becomes a criminal matter, you need counsel. Elena looked them in the eye. I haven't done anything wrong. But she could feel the walls beginning to bend inward. She called the private doctor who handled her scans. Move my appointment. I need full prenatal labs. And fetal DNA testing. The doctor paused. You sure? Yes, Elena said, because she knew what came next. If Adrian was on the trail, it was only a matter of time before he filed for paternity confirmation. She needed to be ready. He paced the floor of his penthouse, the skyline stretching behind him like a silent jury. He'd received another anonymous message. You want truth? Start with the lab tech who flagged you. Then ask about Nurse Elena. He barely remembered Elena. Just another face in a long hallway. But now he couldn't stop seeing her name. And he couldn't ignore the growing possibility that it was true. He asked his lawyer for a quiet DNA test. Get me a sample from the child, he said. Which child? The lawyer asked. Adrian blinked. What do you mean, which? The answer came like a gut punch. Triplets. Didn't you know? The city buzzed beneath a steel-colored sky. Morning traffic murmured through downtown. In a penthouse suite above it all, Dr. Adrian Wells stood before the wall of glass, watching the sunrise without seeing it. In his hand was a file, heavy, thick, damning. DNA report. Name, Adrian Wells. Sample source, juvenile toothbrush, submitted anonymously. Result, paternity confirmed, 99.9998% match. Status, triple birth confirmation. He read it again. And again. His grip tightened. The paper crumpled. He was a father. Not to one child. Not two. 3. Triplets. His mind couldn't grasp it. He hadn't signed off on any procedure. He hadn't authorized fertilization, surrogacy, nothing. But someone had. Nurse Elena Ruiz. Elena stared at the TV, not really watching. A mug of cold peppermint tea sat untouched on the table. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hands rested protectively over her belly, which had begun to swell more visibly now. The headlines crawled across the screen. Breaking, prominent surgeon linked to unauthorized surrogacy scandal. Wells' children conceived without consent? Anonymous whistleblower shakes fertility industry. Her face wasn't public yet, but the vultures were circling. The fertility clinic hallway was quiet. Elena had waited until night shift, when the building fell into eerie stillness. She wore gloves. Her badge gave her access to the restricted vault where sperm samples were kept in cryogenic tubes. She searched the encrypted donor list. It had taken months to trace West to Adrian Wells. She stood there, heart pounding, hands shaking as she replaced the scan tube ID and logged the sample as discarded. Then she left the vault. With it in her pocket. Within 24 hours, social media went nuclear. Anonymous Reddit threads claimed to have insider info. She stole it. He's covering up. They were lovers once. The babies are leverage. TikTok lawyers weighed in. Ethics experts debated on CNN. The clinic released a vague statement about data irregularities under review. And then the photo leaked. A blurry image of Elena leaving her OB/GYN office, visibly pregnant. The caption? The mother of the Wells triplets. His lawyer, Nathan Cole, paced the room like a shark with a scent trail. We file immediately, Nathan said. Custody, criminal theft, unauthorized fertilization, medical fraud. We'll bury her. Adrian sat unmoving behind his desk. She still works at the clinic? Yes. Not for long. They're panicking. HR's ready to suspend her. Adrian nodded slowly. No press conference. Not yet. No interviews. I want one thing before this explodes. What? Let me meet the children. Nathan blinked. That's a legal nightmare. I don't care. Adrian leaned forward, voice low. I want to see them with my own eyes. She woke to loud knocking. At first, she thought it was a dream. Then a voice, firm, controlled, unmistakable. Ms. Ruiz. It's Dr. Wells. I'm not here to fight. She froze. The hallway stretched between her and the door like a war zone. She opened it, just a crack. He stood there taller than she remembered. Sharper. Older. But still composed, always composed. I only want to talk, he said. About what? The lawsuit, she asked bitterly. No. About them. She didn't move. I've already seen the test, he added. They're mine. A long pause. She opened the door fully. The apartment was modest but warm. Toys were already piled in a basket by the wall. A triple bassinet stood by the window. Elena didn't speak. She simply walked over and picked up one of the infants, tiny, blinking, with tufts of dark hair. She held him out. Adrian hesitated. Then, with an almost surgical gentleness, he took the baby into his arms. Their eyes locked. The child blinked, then yawned. Adrian's breath caught. This wasn't a theory anymore. Not paperwork. Not a headline. This was real. They sat on a park bench one summer watching families pass. You think you'll ever want kids? Marist. Maybe, Elena replied. But not just for the sake of it. I'd want them to mean something. What do you mean? I don't know, Elena said. Legacy, maybe. A way to heal something. Mara smiled. That's dramatic. Elena shrugged. You're dramatic. I'm just broken. Mara linked her arm through Elena's. Then we're both broken. But together. Adrian laid the baby gently back in the bassinet. Why? He asked. Elena didn't flinch. You don't remember her, do you? He frowned. Who? Mara Ruiz. My sister. Your intern. The one who misdiagnosed the mitral valve case 4 years ago. He stiffened. She didn't, Elena continued. You did. But you let her take the fall. And she took her life 6 weeks later. Adrian said nothing. I don't want your money. Or your pity. I wanted you to feel powerless, the way she did. You used children for revenge. No. I chose to be a mother. But the reason I chose your genes was revenge. The rest, that grew into something else. Adrian looked at her, the defiance, the grief. She meant something to you, he said. She was everything. The press finally caught wind of the confrontation. Paparazzi surrounded the clinic. Elena was fired. Adrian's hospital board issued a formal investigation. Both of their lives were in freefall. But still, Elena didn't run. When approached outside her apartment by a reporter, she looked straight into the camera and said, I made choices. So did he. But only one of us got to walk away untouched. The courtroom was full. Cameras, lawyers, spectators. The whole city watched. Elena stood at the center, wearing a navy dress over her swollen belly. Adrian, across the room, looked more like a man than a machine now, tired, tense, almost human. Elena was offered a plea deal. Avoid jail. Surrender custody. Stay silent. She refused. I won't be erased, she said. The judge sighed. Then we proceed. The courtroom fell into stunned silence after Dr. Simon Haddock's confession. Adrian didn't move. He sat like a statue, staring forward, face unreadable, eyes stormy. 1,000 headlines were being drafted in real time, but no one in the room moved. They were all watching him. Dr. Wells, the heart surgeon with ice in his veins, had finally been pierced. Elena remained standing. Her hand gently rested over her belly as if shielding the truth that had finally clawed its way into daylight. Her gaze was not one of triumph, but of tremulous steadiness. She didn't want to win. She wanted the lie to die. The judge cleared his throat. We'll reconvene tomorrow for final statements. As the gavel fell, a new chapter of their war began. The media ambushed them both. Microphones like weapons, questions like arrows. Dr. Wells, do you admit guilt? Ms. Ruiz, was this always about revenge? Adrian didn't speak. Elena shielded her eyes. But amid the chaos, Nathan, Adrian's lawyer, whispered urgently, "The hospital board is considering termination. You need to speak to them." Adrian's voice was low. Not yet. He had somewhere else to be. The triplets were asleep. Elena sat in the dark, phone in hand, watching a clip on repeat, Haddock's confession. She remembered Mara's eyes when she came home that last night. Broken. Silent. As if a switch had been flipped off inside her. Elena whispered, "You were right. They finally saw it." A knock startled her. She opened the door to find Adrian, holding 3 small plush animals and a bag of groceries. "Can we talk?" He made tea. She watched. "I didn't come to argue," he said. "Or to clean up the mess. Not tonight." Elena folded her arms. "Then why?" He paused. Then said it. "Because I want to understand how to be their father." 10 years ago, a younger Adrian stood at his own father's funeral. Rigid. Unmoved. His mother cried quietly beside him. After the service, someone said, "Your father was brilliant, but cold. Never really knew how to love you, did he?" Adrian never responded. But the question echoed inside him for years. The triplets stirred. One began to cry. Elena moved instinctively, but Adrian reached the crib first. He lifted the child, gently rocking him, murmuring something under his breath. The baby quieted. Elena blinked. "You didn't want children," she said. "I didn't want chaos," he replied. "I didn't want weakness. And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I'm learning that strength looks very different from what I thought." The judge reviewed the new evidence. Prosecution dropped the criminal charges. Custody was still on the table. Adrian stood. "Your Honor, I request joint custody. No press. No smear campaigns. Just a clean slate for the children." The courtroom held its breath. Elena's lawyer whispered, "You can reject. Go full custody. He has no leverage." But Elena stood. "I agree to joint custody," she said. Gasps echoed. "On one condition," she added. "They know everything. Not now, but someday. The truth. All of it." The judge nodded. "So ordered." Adrian met the triplets at the park. They ran to him. One with open arms. One shyly behind his brother. One tripping, then laughing. He caught them all. Elena stood at a distance, watching. This was never what she envisioned. She didn't get justice the way she imagined. But as her children laughed with the man she once wanted to destroy, a strange peace settled in her chest. Not victory. Not forgiveness. Just peace. Mara's voice, from a voicemail Elena saved. "Hey, Lena, if something ever happens to me, promise me you'll keep living. Don't get stuck in the pain, okay? Don't let them steal you too." Adrian knelt beside one of the triplets, who handed him a crushed dandelion. "It's for you," the boy said. Adrian took it. He smiled. Elena wiped her eyes. Sometimes, love isn't part of the plan. Sometimes it just grows anyway. The letter stayed on the kitchen table all night, untouched, as if Elena and Adrian feared what else it might hold. Mara's handwriting on the back was unmistakable. The truth always finds a way out. But it's what you do next that matters. It was her. From beyond the grave. A whisper, a push. Elena stared at it for hours. "What if this is just the beginning?" she murmured. Adrian, beside her, said quietly, "Then maybe it's time we stop hiding from the past." Mara stood in the surgical wing, confidence beaming. She was a rising star, handpicked for the elite cardiac program. Adrian, her supervisor, had always been cold but fair. Until that day. A patient died unexpectedly. The anesthesia report showed a miscalculation. Mara was blamed. Her protests were quieted. She was suspended. Then she disappeared. But now, with the confession from Haddock and this mysterious letter surfacing, Adrian began re-examining that day with new eyes. He remembered details he had chosen to forget: the rushed signature, the missing page in the surgical logs, the conversation behind closed doors with Dr. Haddock. He wasn't just a bystander. He was complicit. Adrian stood before the board. "I falsified documentation to protect myself," he confessed. "I was afraid of what a black mark would do to my career. But in doing so, I condemned an innocent resident." The room was silent. One board member asked, "Why admit this now?" He looked out the window. "Because my children deserve a father who tells the truth." She watched the board meeting from her phone, holding Mara's old stethoscope in her lap. Tears slid silently down her cheek. Her sister's name had finally been cleared. Adrian stepped in front of the cameras. "To the Ruiz family and to Mara, wherever she may rest, I am sorry. My ambition clouded my ethics. And while apologies won't undo what's been done, they are the first step toward redemption." Questions flew, but he took none. He left the podium and walked straight to Elena, who was waiting at the edge of the crowd. He handed her a small envelope. Inside, Mara's reinstated medical license, posthumously restored. Elena sobbed. The triplets watched the press conference on TV. One turned to Elena. "Why did Daddy lie before?" Elena crouched to his level. "Because sometimes adults get scared. They make mistakes. But what matters is they make it right." She had packed a suitcase. She planned to leave town, start over. But she visited the hospital one last time, left something behind, a sealed folder, placed deep in the archives. Back in the present, Adrian went searching. He found it. Inside were copies of her last letters. To the ethics board. To him. And one, unopened, addressed to Elena. He gave it to her. She opened the letter with trembling hands. Mara's voice came alive on the page. "Lena, if you're reading this, it means I lost the fight. But don't let it end with me. Hold on to your fire, but don't let it consume you. You have the heart of a lioness. And if someday the world gives you a second chance, choose love." Boisma. The courtroom officially cleared Mara's record. A portrait of her was hung in the hospital's Hall of Honor. A tribute. Adrian and Elena stood side by side, their children at their feet. Not lovers. Not enemies. Co-parents. Partners in truth. As the crowd applauded Mara's name, Elena whispered, "She wasn't erased." Adrian replied, "She saved all of us." The scandal that once rocked the hospital faded into archived headlines. The triplets grew up in a world that never let them forget the story of how they came to be. Whispers followed them through hallways, classrooms, and courtrooms of public opinion. But their home, though complicated, was filled with an undeniable force: love. Adrian and Elena had long since abandoned their battlefield. They lived separate lives, yet remained tethered by their children and a truth they could no longer run from. Adrian sat on a bench, watching the triplets play tag in the distance. Their laughter echoed like freedom. One of them, Leo, wore his stethoscope like a cape. Another, Matteo, held a notebook, scribbling things he refused to share. And the third, Eva, had a quiet intensity that reminded everyone of Mara. Elena arrived moments later, coffee in hand. "You're early," she said. "Habit," Adrian replied, eyes still on the kids. "Surgery hours die hard." They sat in silence. "Do they ask you questions?" he finally asked. She nodded. "All the time. About us. About Mara. About that day in court." He swallowed hard. "What do you tell them?" "The truth." Softly. "Age appropriate. But the truth." Adrian sighed. "I'm not sure I'm ready for the hard version." "You will be," she said. Alone in his study, Adrian sat before a camera. "To my children, by the time you watch this, I hope you've grown into people who ask hard questions. I hope you've found courage where I once lacked it." He paused. "I wanted you without wanting the responsibility. I buried the past to protect myself. I let a good woman, your aunt, be destroyed by my silence. And your mother, she saw through everything. She didn't just give you life. She gave you back the truth." He leaned forward. "You were born in chaos. But you taught me what love truly means." He ended the recording. Saved it. Locked it in a drawer. Eva stood at a podium. High school graduation. Some of us were born with stories written for us before we had the chance to choose our own beginnings. But I believe what matters isn't how our stories start, it's what we do when the pen is finally in our hands. Elena wept quietly in the audience. Adrian, beside her, took her hand. No words were needed. The voicemail played again. The one from the unknown woman. You think it's over? Mara wasn't the only one he hurt. We need to talk. Before history repeats itself. Elena hesitated. Then called the number back. No answer. She stared at the screen, haunted. Mara's last months. Mara had met someone. A whistleblower nurse who had uncovered a pattern of unethical practices linked to Haddock and others. But she was afraid. The last message she left Elena before her death had been mysteriously deleted. Could it be? He reviewed old case files from Mara's time. Found an anomaly. A woman listed on the anesthesia report, Claire Delaney. Not part of his team. No public record. A ghost in the system. He printed it. Took it to Elena. We may have missed something, he said. Someone. Together, they found Claire. Living under a new name. Hidden for years. She opened the door. Pale, trembling. You're Mara's sister, she whispered. Elena nodded. I was there that night. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a cover-up. Mara tried to expose it. They threatened her. I ran. Adrian looked down. Claire added, but I kept everything. Records. Emails. Her journal. If you still want the truth, I can help. Elena and Adrian exchanged a glance. Not a vengeance this time, but purpose. Eva, Leo, and Mateo play in the yard as the sun sets. Adrian watches, phone in hand, the words from Mara's letter still etched in memory. If the world gives you a second chance, choose love. As Elena steps beside him, the camera pulls back. Their story wasn't just about betrayal or revenge. It was about what rises when the dust finally settles.